The judge didn't even ask my name. His eyes skipped over the case file lying on his bench and locked onto the silver medal pinned neatly above my left pocket. His expression hardened. "Remove the medal," he said. His voice echoed through the courtroom like a hammer striking steel. For a second, I wondered if I'd heard him correctly. Around me, the room fell completely silent. The court reporter stopped typing. The bailiff slowly looked up. Even the attorneys exchanged confused glances. I stood there without moving. That medal had been on my uniform for nearly 12 years. It wasn't decoration. It wasn't jewelry. It represented a day that had changed my life forever. I looked at the judge calmly. "Your Honor, would you like that order entered into the official transcript?" His eyebrows narrowed. "I gave you an order, Major. I wasn't asking for legal advice." I nodded once. "Very well." I reached down and unlocked my old leather briefcase. 30 seconds later. The court clerk's fingers froze above her keyboard. She stared at the document I had placed on the evidence table. Her face drained of color. She whispered only 4 words. "Oh, this can't be. My name is Major Daniel Carter. I served 21 years in the United States Army. Afghanistan. Iraq. Eastern Europe. Places most people only see on television. I buried friends. I've carried soldiers younger than my own son onto evacuation helicopters. I've learned that real courage rarely makes headlines. When I retired, I thought the hardest days were behind me. I was wrong. The battle waiting for me wasn't overseas. It was inside a quiet county courthouse. Because of a piece of land my grandfather left behind. The property wasn't worth millions. It wasn't an oil field. It wasn't beachfront property. It was a small family ranch outside Montana. 300 acres. An old red barn. A weathered farmhouse. And a cemetery where 4 generations of my family rested beneath simple white stones. To me, that land wasn't property. It was history. To someone else, it was money. That someone was Victor Hale. A wealthy real estate developer. He wanted to build luxury vacation homes across the valley. There was only one problem. My family's ranch sat directly in the middle of his project. He offered me $3 million. I refused. He offered $5 million. I refused again. A week later, I received court papers. Victor wasn't asking anymore. He was suing. Everyone told me to settle. My attorney even suggested it. "You'll never beat a man with his money." I smiled. I faced enemies with tanks. I'm not worried about lawyers. Still, something about the lawsuit bothered me. The documents felt too perfect. Almost as if someone already knew how the case would end. That's when I began looking into the judge assigned to the case. Judge Harold Whitmore. 23 years on the bench. A reputation for moving cases quickly. Almost never overturned. People respected him. People also feared him. But one detail caught my attention. 5 years earlier, he had served on the board of a charitable foundation, one of the largest donors. Was Victor Hale. There wasn't enough evidence to accuse anyone of wrongdoing. But there was enough to make me prepare carefully. So I packed one extra folder inside my briefcase. Just in case. I prayed I'd never need to open it. I was wrong. The moment Judge Whitmore ordered me to remove my medal, I knew that folder was about to change everything. The courtroom remained silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioner above us. The court clerk continued staring at the document. Her hands trembled. Then she slowly looked toward Judge Whitmore. "Your Honor." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I think you should read this yourself." The judge frowned. "I'll decide what I need to read." He reached across the bench and pulled the folder toward him. His expression carried the confidence of a man who had spent decades believing every courtroom belonged to him. He opened the folder. The first page looked ordinary. An official Department of Defense document. He barely glanced at it before flipping to the second page. Then he stopped. His eyes narrowed. He read the paragraph once. Then again. This time more slowly. I watched the confidence slowly disappear from his face. Across the courtroom, Victor Hale leaned toward his attorney. "What is it?" he whispered. His lawyer simply shook his head. "I don't know." Neither did anyone else. Not yet. Judge Whitmore finally looked up. "Where did you get these documents?" "I requested them through the Department of Defense. They're certified originals." The judge looked back down. The clerk quietly slid her reading glasses onto her face. She wasn't reading because she had to. She was reading because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The third page contained something most civilians never knew existed. A federal memorandum explaining the legal protections surrounding officially awarded military decorations during government proceedings. It wasn't simply etiquette. It wasn't tradition. It was official guidance. Any order requiring the removal of a properly worn military decoration had to be supported by a lawful reason. Personal opinion wasn't enough. The judge swallowed. For the first time that morning, he looked uncertain. My attorney, Sarah Mitchell, slowly stood. "Your Honor, I request that the document be admitted into evidence." Victor's attorney jumped to his feet. "Objection." "On what grounds?" Sarah asked calmly. He hesitated. He searched for an answer. None came. "Relevance." Sarah smiled politely. "Your client claims Major Carter attempted to influence the court through appearance. This memorandum directly addresses that allegation." The judge remained silent. Finally, objection overruled. Victor looked stunned. It was the first ruling that hadn't gone his way. The judge cleared his throat. "Major Carter, why did you ask whether my order should be entered into the transcript?" I answered honestly. "Because I knew this document existed. And because official court transcripts cannot be altered once certified." The courtroom became even quieter. Everyone understood what I meant. Every word spoken that morning was now permanent. Victor shifted nervously. He had walked into court expecting another routine hearing. Instead, the entire case had taken a direction no one anticipated. He leaned toward his attorney again. "This doesn't change the property dispute." His lawyer whispered back. "I'm no longer sure that's the biggest issue." Judge Whitmore closed the folder. "Let's proceed with the property case." Sarah stood again. "Before we continue, I'd like the court to disclose something." The judge looked irritated. "What now?" Sarah opened another file. "Judge Whitmore, did you previously serve on the board of the Montana Heritage Development Foundation?" The courtroom froze again. The judge's face remained expressionless. "Yes. It was years ago." Sarah nodded. "And during your service? Was Mr. Victor Hale one of the foundation's largest financial contributors?" Victor's attorney stood immediately. "Objection. Relevance." Sarah didn't even look at him. "It concerns potential disclosure requirements." The judge slowly removed his glasses. "I don't see how this is relevant." Sarah placed another document on the evidence table. "This foundation received nearly $8 million from Mr. Hale's companies during the period Your Honor served on its board." The courtroom erupted with whispers. The bailiff shouted, "Order! Order in the courtroom." Victor's confident smile disappeared. For the first time, he looked worried. Very worried. The judge adjusted his robe. "I disclosed all required affiliations." Sarah answered calmly. I'm sure you did. But this court file contains no disclosure statement. Silence. Judge Whitmore turned toward the clerk. Is that accurate? The clerk searched the electronic case file. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. A few seconds later, she stopped. Her eyes widened. No disclosure document has been filed. The judge's face turned pale. I remained seated. Military training teaches patience. Sometimes you win by saying nothing. Victor suddenly stood. I had nothing to do with any of this. Nobody answered him. Nobody needed to. His own lawyer looked uncomfortable. Sarah slowly closed her folder. Your Honor. Given these circumstances, I respectfully request that this matter be transferred to another judge pending review. Victor's attorney objected immediately. This is outrageous. Sarah calmly replied. No. What's outrageous is pretending none of this exists. The courtroom doors opened. A deputy entered carrying an official envelope. He walked directly to the clerk. She opened it. Read the first page. Then looked toward Judge Whitmore. Her voice shook. Your Honor. This is from the State Judicial Ethics Commission. The room went silent once again. The judge stared at the envelope. His expression changed completely. He already knew, before anyone spoke another word, that this day was no longer about a ranch in Montana. It had become something much bigger. The courtroom became so quiet. You could hear the clerk unfolding the letter. Every pair of eyes followed the white envelope in her hands. Judge Whitmore's jaw tightened. He knew that seal. The blue eagle printed across the top belonged to the Montana Judicial Ethics Commission. The clerk looked uncertain. Your Honor. It says urgent. The judge slowly extended his hand. I'll read it. Before she could pass it to him, Sarah Mitchell stood. Your Honor, I respectfully request that the letter first be entered into the record. Victor Hale slammed his hand onto the table. This has nothing to do with my lawsuit. Sarah calmly turned toward him. It may have everything to do with your lawsuit. Judge Whitmore unfolded the letter. His eyes moved across the page. Once. Then twice. Every second that passed made his face lose more color. I had seen that expression before. Not in courtrooms. On battlefields. It was the look soldiers wore when they realized the mission had just changed. Finally, the judge cleared his throat. This court will take a brief recess. No. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. An older man in a dark blue suit slowly walked through the doors. He wasn't wearing a military uniform. He wasn't carrying a briefcase. He carried only a leather identification wallet. He opened it. My name is Thomas Reynolds. Senior Investigator. Montana Judicial Ethics Commission. The room froze. Even the bailiff stepped aside. Reynolds approached the bench. Judge Whitmore. I need a few moments of your time. The judge looked annoyed. This is highly irregular. So is today's hearing. Reynolds answered, without raising his voice. Victor Hale whispered frantically to his attorney. What's happening? His lawyer looked pale. I don't know. But I think this hearing is over. Reynolds placed another folder on the bench. This office has received several complaints regarding conflicts of interest connected to development projects in this county. Judge Whitmore remained silent. Reynolds continued. This morning's proceedings triggered an automatic review because additional information was submitted before court began. Victor suddenly looked toward me. Realization spread across his face. You reported this. I met his eyes. I reported facts. What happened afterward wasn't my decision. The investigator opened his folder. Inside were dozens of documents. Property records. Donation reports. Meeting minutes. Financial disclosures. Sarah looked surprised. Even she hadn't seen everything. Reynolds continued speaking. Mr. Hale. Did your companies donate more than $11 million to the Montana Heritage Development Foundation? Victor hesitated. My businesses support many charities. Please answer the question. Yes. And was Judge Whitmore a board member during those years? Yes. The investigator nodded. No further questions. Nobody in the courtroom moved. The silence became unbearable. Judge Whitmore slowly leaned back. This proves nothing. Reynolds agreed. Correct. Which is why we investigate. Sarah stood once more. Your Honor. In light of today's events, I renew my motion requesting your recusal. Victor's attorney didn't object. Not this time. Instead, he quietly closed his notebook. He knew where this was heading. Judge Whitmore looked toward the courtroom clock. It read 10:42 a.m. Only 40 minutes had passed since court began. It felt like an entire day. He slowly removed his reading glasses. Then, for the first time all morning, he looked directly at me. Major Carter. I understand now why you asked about the transcript. I answered quietly. Yes, Your Honor. I wanted the record to speak for itself. The investigator spoke again. For the record, nothing in today's review concerns Major Carter's military service. The concern is whether this court has remained impartial. Those words changed everything. The whispers inside the gallery grew louder. Reporters sitting in the back row began writing rapidly. One photographer quietly lifted his camera. Flash. Another picture. Victor closed his eyes. His perfect plan was collapsing. Then, the courtroom doors opened again. Everyone turned. An elderly woman walked inside carrying a worn leather folder. She wasn't dressed like a lawyer. She wasn't dressed like a reporter. She walked slowly, using a wooden cane. The clerk looked confused. Ma'am, can I help you? The woman smiled. I believe I've come to save Major Carter's ranch. She looked directly at me. I've been waiting 23 years. To tell the truth. The entire courtroom stared at her. Even the investigator looked surprised. Sarah whispered. Daniel. Who is she? I slowly stood. Because I recognized her immediately. She had once worked for my grandfather. And if she still possessed what I believed she did, Victor Hale's entire lawsuit was about to disappear forever. The elderly woman walked slowly toward the witness stand. Every step echoed across the silent courtroom. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't in a hurry. She looked like someone who had carried a secret for far too many years. The bailiff stepped forward. Ma'am, please state your name for the record. She smiled gently. My name is Margaret Ellis. The name meant nothing to most people in the room. But it meant everything to me. Margaret had worked for my grandfather for nearly 30 years. She had watched me grow from a little boy running through the ranch into a soldier leaving for basic training. After my grandfather passed away, she quietly disappeared from our lives. I hadn't seen her in over 2 decades. Sarah looked at me. You know her? I nodded. She practically raised me. Victor Hale rolled his eyes. What does this have to do with the lawsuit? Margaret slowly turned toward him. Everything. She placed an old leather folder on the witness stand. The edges were cracked. The brass clasp had turned dark with age. It looked older than some people sitting in the courtroom. She carefully opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope. Yellowed with time. Across the front, written in fading blue ink, were 6 words. To be opened only in court. The courtroom became perfectly still. Judge Whitmore looked toward Sarah. "Counsel. Do you know anything about this?" Sarah shook her head. "No, Your Honor. This is the first time I've seen it. Even I had never heard of the envelope." Margaret looked directly at me. "Your grandfather made me promise. He said one day someone would try to steal this ranch. And if that day ever came, I was to bring this." Victor laughed. "A handwritten envelope? This isn't a movie." Margaret didn't even look at him. She simply handed the envelope to the bailiff. "Please give this to the judge." The bailiff carried it carefully to the bench. Judge Whitmore examined the seal. It hadn't been broken. Not once. He looked toward both attorneys. "Any objection to opening it?" Victor's attorney slowly stood. He looked uncertain. Then, "No objection." Sarah smiled. "No objection from the defense." The judge broke the seal. Inside were several folded documents. A handwritten letter. An original land survey. And something else. A notarized agreement dated 24 years earlier. Judge Whitmore adjusted his glasses. His eyes widened. He immediately began reading more carefully. Margaret finally spoke. "Your Honor. Daniel's grandfather knew developers would come someday. They had already started making offers before he died. So he hired 2 survey companies. The second survey discovered something the first one missed." Victor suddenly leaned forward. "What are you talking about?" Margaret answered quietly. "The ranch boundaries." Sarah quickly walked toward the bench. "May I see the document?" The judge handed it over. She unfolded the survey map. A slow smile appeared on her face. "Oh. My God." Victor stood up. "What is it?" Nobody answered. Sarah simply walked to the courtroom display screen. She placed the survey beneath the document camera. The image appeared for everyone to see. Colored boundary lines crossed the screen. Measurements. Coordinates. Government survey stamps. Everything looked ordinary. Until Sarah pointed at one section. "This is the property Mr. Hale claims." She moved her finger. "And this is the property's actual legal boundary." A red line appeared almost 80 feet away. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Victor's smile disappeared. Sarah looked directly at him. "According to this certified survey, Major Carter's ranch was never part of your development project." Victor stared at the screen. His face turned white. "That's impossible." Margaret quietly replied. "No. It's recorded. It has been for 24 years. The investigator from the Judicial Ethics Commission stepped closer. "Can we verify this?" Sarah nodded. "The county records office keeps original survey copies." The court clerk immediately opened the county database. She entered the survey number. The computer searched. Everyone waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then, a green confirmation appeared on the screen. "Official county record found." The clerk gasped. "It matches. Every coordinate. Every signature." Victor slowly sat back down. His attorney closed his eyes. He already knew. The lawsuit had just collapsed. But then, the clerk frowned. "Your Honor. There's something else." She clicked another document. The room watched as an old property transfer appeared. One name immediately caught everyone's attention. Victor Hale. Property adjustment request. Denied, 21 years ago. Victor stared at the screen in complete disbelief. "No. That's not possible." The investigator slowly looked toward him. "It appears this isn't the first time you've tried to acquire this land." The courtroom fell silent once again. And for the first time that day, Victor Hale realized. He was no longer the man asking the questions. He was about to become the man answering them. Victor Hale could no longer hide. The county records were clear. 21 years earlier, he had already tried to acquire my grandfather's ranch. His request had been denied. Yet somehow, years later, he returned with a lawsuit claiming ownership. The judicial ethics investigator looked directly at Victor. "Mr. Hale, did you knowingly file a false claim?" Victor remained silent. His attorney quietly stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw the lawsuit immediately." Sarah smiled. "Too late. The evidence is already on the record." The investigator closed his folder. "This matter will now be referred for further investigation." Victor's shoulders dropped. His confidence was gone. Judge Whitmore looked around the courtroom. "The plaintiff's claim is dismissed with prejudice." He turned toward me. "Major Carter, you may keep your ranch." For a moment, no one spoke. I looked down at the medal still pinned to my uniform. It had never been about the medal. It had always been about truth. As I walked out of the courthouse, the old ranch was still mine. My grandfather's promise had been kept. And I realized something I'll never forget. Honor isn't something another person can take away.